Welcome. I am so happy to be here. It's going to be really nice to see who shows up with us tonight. We are waiting to speak to Elle Ness. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Elle Ness is the author of Dear God. Here's that little book, Amazon bestseller, written by Elle Ness. I don't know how many of you here have read it, but if you haven't, you should read it. It's one of those books that once you start, you can't stop. And it's one of those books that are really forever life-changing. Oh, here she is. Okay. We are going. Okay. That didn't work. Wait to see until she gets here.
Hi, sorry about that.
I'm so glad that you made it in.
Of course. I am actually, I usually don't do many lives, so I'm a little bit technically challenged, but thank you for your patience as I got on here. I'm happy to be here today.
I know, it's always just like on God's timing. You know that,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Thank you so much for joining. We seem to have a whole lot of people that are interested in hearing about, the way I phrased it was about healing and about God and about finding God in your
Oh,
healing. So, yeah. So tell us, I already showed some of our listeners this little book that was life transforming for me. And I'll start out by saying, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rafi Friedlander. I'm an emotions mastery coach or a spiritual healer. Been doing the healing, been doing the work, been coming closer to God on my journey, been meeting so many beautiful souls. And then I found this book, and I have to say, I literally cried straight through it. There's something extremely touching and personal in the way you develop that relationship with God. So we're here today with Elle Ness, author of Dear God, and tell us a little bit about yourself. And
sure.
let's get
Um,
into it.
okay, so my name is Elle, short for Elisheva. And I am an author of a couple books, but my first and my baby is Dear God, that first book that you're talking about. Um, and it's funny, I actually published it under a pen name, and I was planning on being an anonymous author because I wanted to make it as personal as possible without worrying, about sharing too much. So when I wrote it as if nobody was going to know it's my journey, and just I wrote what would have helped me if I knew somebody was going through. And I basically wrote my journal, like what my conversations really were. In a very tough, challenging part of my life. And when I put this book out, a few people that knew me were like, you got to tell people this is you, because if you connect it to yourself, that it's a human, that is somebody real within our community, it is so much more helpful, and it means so much more. So I put myself out there, I started telling people I started writing more books, and it's something that I love to do. I actually publish all these books on my own. I don't have a team or a publisher or anything. So I did all of it, like from A to Z. Me and God, we wrote them, we did the cover art, we published them. And the fact that they just like blew up and reached people is just, it shows, that it was really meant to. So it's been life-changing for me, and it's really given my life meaning. And it's really special to talk to people who have read it, and who have reactions like you did. It means the world to me.
Yeah. So I find that fascinating that you took the leap to share vulnerably, put your name on it. I think I think each of us really has a very unique story. For many of us, the idea of putting our names out there and going public, talk about the vulnerability, the shame. But on the other hand, it's the authenticity of it that really drives it home.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, do you regret that, or do you feel like that was the right move? Because that's a big, like, that's a leap.
Yeah, do you know the term vulnerability hangover? So yeah, so
Oh, Brene Brown, right? Yeah.
so I live that. It's funny, like there's times where I like wish I could just like hide under a bed because like people know like the saddest, hardest parts of my life, my most intimate conversations with God. But then on the other hand, there's people who it has changed their life, and like all different kinds of people, all ages, all different stages of life, that they're connecting to God. They don't feel alone. They know that their pain, such deep pain, is not only normal, but they can get through it and get to a healthy place. Um, so it like balances out. So it makes it worth it. So no regret. It
Yeah.
comes in, but I just remind myself, of the feedback that I get.
So, wow. Yeah, that takes a lot of courage. So kudos to you. Like, for real, how many of us listening are thinking, okay, maybe one day I'll have the
Oh,
courage?
I
You know?
hope you do. Everybody's story, like when I talked to you the first time, I'm like, what's your story? I love getting to know people's stories because everybody has a phenomenal story. And especially these days, it's so I don't know, I don't want to say easy because it's not easy, but it's so possible to just do it on your own, to write your story, make your own cover art, put it out on your own. You don't need, a publisher or a team behind you, and you don't know who it's going to reach. I was hoping it'll help maybe one, two people once I realized I was going to be doing it on my own. And it's like, it went to like really top 10 on Amazon bestsellers. So, don't, and I didn't have a team. So if you are thinking about writing your book, I would strongly encourage it. Your story could really help people in really deep ways.
Yeah. That's so amazing. I love that little, you're kind of doing a little Amazon sell in there, which, yeah, I mean, technology is here to make our life easier. And for those of us who have a story, you need nothing, no
No,
excuses.
and everybody
Like,
has a story. Even if you don't think your story is so interesting, I'm sure it is, and it can help people.
right. And the truth is that we should be encouraging of those who want to publish anonymously as well, because
Yeah,
our our ability to relate to others, our ability to expand our own experiences based on reading about somebody else's is tremendous. Really, really tremendous. So,
100%.
yeah, wow, that is fascinating. It's also interesting that the audience that you reached was so diverse and different than you expected, right? Do you want to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So my background a little bit was, I grew up in a very religious, like in the box community. And as I was trying to like find myself, I went through all these different struggles, and that's really like the journey that I'm sharing. So I thought that I could help other people that were in that situation, that were like alone or trying to make their own path and, kind of lost. But I ended up reaching so many people still within like the religious community within the box that I grew up with in, that even though they didn't like have to go make their own path and they didn't find themselves alone, they didn't have a relationship with God, they were lacking like any kind of meaning in their life, and they found my book. I don't know how they found it, they read it, and they're reaching out to me that it changed their life. They now have a relationship with God, and these are people who are, super religious, observant, following all the rules, trying to do everything right, but they're just lacking that, like that connection to something. Um, and the book, it not only did it reach them, but it helped them, and they connected to it in their own way. So I loved hearing that. What an honor.
Right. It is interesting because, we can differentiate between like being religious and separate that from being connected to God, because it's it doesn't it should go together, but it doesn't always go together. So what's
Hmm.
interesting is that for me, I was actually wondering about that. Like, when did you develop that relationship with God? If we separate that from a specific religious community or specific religious standards, we're just saying, whatever religion you're practicing, whatever it is you believe, but we all know there is one higher power, and that's the God that we're referring to right now in this conversation, regardless of your religious beliefs, regardless of the community standards. So, did you always have that relationship? Like, is it something that you got as a gift? How did you cultivate that? And also, like, what's it like today? That I'm curious
Yeah.
about. Like,
Very interesting, very good questions. So I really can't take any credit for it. My parents are both Bali Teshuva, so they didn't grow up religious. They didn't grow up with a relationship to God, and they found it and chose it as adults. and they sacrificed a lot to choose a life of being close to God and making that relationship and choosing religion and learning it and all of that. So I was raised, I wasn't taught like talk to God, have a relationship with God, but they embodied it in a way where everything that they did just had this love for God. They had an amazing relationship to God. They talked to God constantly, and it was just like something that I grew up with. That was really real, that I know my friends around me didn't have. You know, my dad, he would make Kiddush Friday night and he would cry from the closeness of feeling so close to God. Like really not,
Mhm.
you know, just it was so beautiful, the relationship with God, and it just, you know, went into my blood. And as a little kid, I remember like when I was sad or I didn't get something that I wanted, I didn't tell my parents or I didn't tell my friends. I would like, when I went to sleep at night, I would like talk to God in my own words and I would ask him for help or I would cry to him, like, you know, as a kid. So it's something that I definitely learned by example from my parents. But it was a very different relationship. To me, when I was a child, God was somebody that did something, that gave us things, that took things away, that made things happen. It was like this very removed, scary, amazing and beautiful and loving, but like too much for me to like ever be able to handle or have a relationship with. Um, in a way that I have now. As I grew up and I went through many stages of relationship with God, I've gone through, you know, all the way to hate and anger and yelling and um, not caring because I just couldn't care anymore. And then I went to like the place where I'm at right now, where um, I just didn't stop trying to have a relationship with God. I kept talking to Him through things and feeding that relationship. And so at this point, where I'm healed and I am in a very good, healthy spot, and God definitely brought me here. To now, God is like my, you know how you say like your partner is your everything. He's literally my everything. He's my therapist. He's my best friend. He's my father. He's my lover. He's my everything. I need anything. I want to
Wow.
talk to somebody. You know, anything I want to do, or the first person I want to share something with. He's not a person, but like I talk to God about it all. Um, so I can't take credit for it because I was born into this beautiful family that had this. Oops, sorry, but I definitely followed their lead, and yeah, I hope to do the same for my children one day because I don't know if I would have found that on my own. Like I talked to my friends about it and they're like, how do you have this relationship with God? Like I want to talk to him. I want to hear him talk. I want to like feel close to him. And I'm like, you know, I'll tell them different steps and they'll try to do it, but it's different when you're born into that environment.
Wow. So you're saying like originally you got it as a gift of the nurture in your early years. By the way, for everybody that's listening, you can text in questions to Elle if you feel like, because I know I'm fascinated, and I know that honestly, I think so many are grappling with these questions. I think for all of us, especially now that for myself personally, I've explored so much healing. I know that the cornerstone of healing is to build a safe, trusting, certain relationship with God.
Hmm.
And for those of us, like the way you describe it in the book, all those challenges that you had growing up and feeling that amount of fear or despair on a daily basis, right? And then trying to reestablish kind of a new life, a new being, a new sense of self. Really, the only way to do it is to be certain, to know, to have a knowing. God's here all the time, and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And there's no way to do that without God in the picture. I wonder if you care to, would you share with our listeners some steps how to do that? Because I see somebody sending a question. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you can see the questions.
Yeah.
Are you able to see? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I cannot agree with you more. I always say this, without God, without faith, I never would be here today. Like I really wouldn't. So, you know, and I talk about it all the time. Like, so what do you do? Because I want everybody to have, I don't want to, you know, keep this for myself. I'm literally, I just want to be like an example to show you it doesn't matter what you're like or what you look like or what you've done in your past. you can have a relationship with God, a really, really good one where it's not scary and it's not distant and it's not, it's in your way, the way that works for you. So I actually talk about it a lot, and I'm really happy to answer this question because this is very close to home for me. Um, the first step is to look at God as the most important relationship in your life, because all of the relationships that you have are going to be mirrored in your relationship with God. If you have a good relationship with God, like a really good one, all your relationships are going to be really good. If you make it magical, it's going to be all your relationships are going to be magical. It really comes to what is your relationship like with God. Now, what I'm going to say is it's going to sound hard, but it's really not, because we spend so much time on social media. We spend so much time watching TV, watching a movie, talking to friends, but we don't really spend time with God. And I'm not just talking about taking out a prayer book and reading through a prayer book, which is beautiful. And that's a big part of my every single day. But having a date with God, but in more of like, what I recommend is going into a space where nobody could hear you every single day and talking out loud to God for a few minutes. You could start with 5 minutes a day, put on some calm music that doesn't distract you so you can really focus, and talk out loud as if God is sitting right in front of you. And with time, you're going to realize that God really is right in front of you, and he really is listening to every word you say. And he cares about you and he loves you more than you ever will about yourself. So the more you spend time feeding that relationship with him and you show up and you spend that time with God, you're going to have a relationship with him. Imagine you have a plant in your house and you spend 5 minutes every day talking to it, singing to it, then it makes it really flourish, and watering it and caring for it. A couple of days go by, a couple of weeks go by, that relationship is going to build. You're going to really care about that plant when it's growing more and it looks beautiful and it's blooming. You're going to care a lot about it. And that's a plant. Imagine your relationship with God. So the first thing I would say is to sit somewhere quietly, talking to God out loud where nobody could hear you, and pour your heart out to him. If it's hard for you, just start with like, God, I want to talk to you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to talk to you for the next 5 minutes. Can you give me the words to say? I don't even know what to say, if nothing comes to your mind. And then add time to it. I think I started with like 5 minutes a day when I made it a daily practice. I'm up to like an hour now every single day, no matter what. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, I don't care what's happening. I will wake up, talk to God
Wow.
for an hour by myself in a closed room. Nobody can bother me. My music is on, and I talk like he's sitting right there, because he is. And like I said, he's my therapist. He's my best friend. I talk to him about everything. And the best part is you could also ask him for anything that you want, because he gives all the things. So if you're talking to him and you're like, you know what, I would really love help with this, um, he'll give you either like expanded consciousness, knowledge of how to get it, or he'll just give it to you as a surprise gift because, look, you deserve it. Or he'll help you understand why maybe it's not good for you. You're talking to the keeper of all secrets, the keeper of all things. He's the controller of the world. And he also happens to love you more than, more than anyone. Um, so that's what I would recommend. And then the other thing is that prayer from a prayer book. I just think the other one is most important because that's like a service of your heart. But prayer from a prayer book, it could help you because it's singing like these beautiful songs, that were pieced together ready for you. Um, Doing something that feeds your soul, that's going to connect you to God, because your soul is that little piece of God that he put inside you. So the more you connect to your soul, the more you're going to connect to God. Maybe stay away a little bit from things that make your soul feel like a little empty or dark, because that pushes you away from God. But number one thing I would recommend, if you have like 5 minutes a day, every single day, just go and talk to him, and ask him to have that relationship, and he'll give it to you because he wants to have a relationship with you way more than you want to have with him.
Right. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I remember the parts of my journey when I was starting to do that. And what I found so shocking or so surprising in those quiet moments was that I was saying things about myself that I didn't even know consciously. I didn't know, but the words would be coming out of my mouth, and I'd be listening to myself, right? Because one of the ways I practiced it, I don't know if you practice it like that. One of the ways I practiced it was that I needed to hear myself. Like I wasn't going to whisper. It needed to be really audible to me, because whispering is like you don't you're not really listening. So I would, talk out loud in the car or in that private space, and I would be so surprised that, oh, I didn't know I was so sad about, ABC, or I didn't realize I was so frustrated about. And as time went on, like you say, like the timing got longer, and I kept learning more and more about myself.
Yeah.
And I was like revealing me to me in such a beautiful, safe space, finally, for the first time. And I think that just by taking like the courage to hear yourself, to really listen to what it is you're feeling and what it is you're thinking, you grow into a different person. You grow into a safer person. I know what I'm thinking. I know what I'm feeling. I can be with me, and I can become, like you said, God in that quiet space becomes your most loyal friend.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's really, really like that. Wow, thank you. That was such a beautiful answer. If anybody wants to ask any more questions, please do. But I think after this live, if you listen to that, you're gonna start talking to God
Oh, I
in
hope
a quiet
so.
space.
I really hope so. It's different when you're like multitasking, you're driving somewhere, like it's great, but when you really like sit down and focus on it, and 100% in a loud voice, like don't just whisper, like talk out loud. He's there, and it's really for you too, and it definitely uncovers your subconscious. It's magic. He talks through you. He literally gives you the words to say, and it's the best thing that I've ever done. And anybody can do it for free.
Yeah, like at this point, there are no excuses.
Exactly.
So like get out there, meet yourself,
Yeah.
meet God,
Yeah.
and make it happen. Yeah, I remember reading that somewhere. Like a guy asked, like, where do I find God? Right? And the answer he was given was just go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say hi, and just get quiet. You're gonna hear
Oh yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. And if you do this long enough, you will hear all your answers. He answers you. And it's like that's the best. You get all the secrets of your life that you're looking for. You get all your answers. It's such a simple thing, and we make so many excuses. You're going to have a lot of excuses not to do it. I still get excuses, in my head, my ego, and, tries to trip me up, and maybe I shouldn't do it, and I did it enough, and it's not important, but it is the most important thing. And don't let the excuses get to you. Just go and do it, and you'll feel the difference.
Yeah, because it's like that makes me think, like, how do you have an hour a day, right? Most of us would be like, oh, come on, on a
Earlier.
practical level, like you got to get up really early to do that.
Yeah, which means you got to go to sleep early, which means you got to plan your day right, and what is important, like what are your priorities. I didn't always do this. I really didn't always do this, but you need to decide what's important to you, and I can't imagine that there's anything more important than having a relationship with God.
Yeah. Can you tell us, I mean, if you care to share that defining moment in the book where it was either going to be all over for you, and that the spirit was so great and there was really no hope left. You know, I can't say everybody's had that amount of darkness, but most of us have had a moment where, we felt like the darkness can't get any worse than that. Like how how is that for you looking back today? How did you get through that amount of despair, that amount of discouragement, that kind of history? Like it's just it's so heavy. It pulls you down. It makes you believe it's never getting better when
Yeah.
you're in there, right? So, do you want to tell us a little bit for for the listeners who haven't read the book? Do you want to tell us a little bit of a background of like what was going on for you, and like how you came to that defining moment, and like what has transpired since, if you feel
Yeah.
like, as much as you want to share.
Are you talking about all the way at the end of the book, or are you talking about like through the book?
Well, I was referring to that specific moment when you were sitting in the driveway in the car,
Okay. Yeah.
and you just that. But maybe you want to talk about it in more general terms.
Yeah, sure. So, um, really, like the whole book, if you haven't read it, is just like, it's not really so, I try to keep it very simple as like just conversations between a girl and God. And
Thank you,
we,
Ellie.
Thank you. Leading towards the end of the book, like the whole book, I'm just like going through one trauma and one terrible situation after another. And I was trying to like, get through everything. And I just kept getting like knocked down by ridiculous situations. Like each one was too big to handle. And I didn't have a good like perspective. My consciousness was way off. My whole perspective was off. Um, and so I get to the end of this part of my journey, and I am literally, head to toe. I felt like up to my forehead in pain, emotional pain. I had already been extremely physically ill from all this pain, and I did all this healing that I could do, and I just like didn't have anything left in me. Like I tried everything I could, and I didn't have anything left in me to keep going. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I literally was a skeleton. I think I weighed like 100 pounds, and I'm like 5'4". Like my bones were sticking out. I literally couldn't function. And so the climax at the end is that I was sitting in my car one night and I was just like, I was crushed and it was too much. And I literally had like this near death experience where I had basically starved myself to death. I hadn't eaten in days. And my soul left my body. And I just finally, I'm going to leave that for the book, like what actually happened in those moments. But what I was able to get from that experience was God gave me this totally expanded consciousness, and I didn't give up, right? I kept trying to go and I kept trying to do the right thing, and I kept holding on because I wanted to get through it and I wanted to help people get through things that I was, similar situations. So I kept holding on, and God gave me this gift of this crazy expanded consciousness. And what I mean by that is the whole time, all this suffering, all this despair, my perspective was totally off. Right, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, you read that, right? Amazing book. He talks about logotherapy, I think he calls it, where the meaning that you give something is basically whether you're suffering or not. He went through way worse than I did, and he was okay. Um, and it was just my perspective was way off. So God gave me this amazing expanded consciousness where he helped me zoom all the way out and see my whole entire life and my whole entire journey and where I was supposed to go and why I had to go through these things. And I didn't have to understand everything. Everything was always good for me because it happened by God, and I always did my best. And everything was really, it wasn't in a cliche way. I really felt it in my bones that everything was so good for me, and I ended up in such a great spot, even though it
You're
hurt so bad. I'm sorry?
you're breaking up a little
Oh,
bit. I'm not sure.
okay.
It,
Um, but basically the point here is that when it got just like too much, I got this gift of expanded consciousness and my perspective was zoomed way out, and I was able to see the big picture. And to me, what I was able to see was from God's perspective, zoomed out and looking at the whole world and how everybody functions and the whole story of somebody's life and where they're supposed to go and who they're supposed to be. Everything was just so perfect. And even better than that, I got, I don't know why, but I got an amazing gift at being able to have a second chance at life and to not have that be the end of my story. Um, and it was a choice, and it was a crazy choice, but I got to have a second chance at life, and I did choose that. Um, and I got to continue living. To me, it's a new life, that started day one. And I got to continue living with this amazing perspective of being able to zoom out of the situation and know that even if I don't understand it and it hurts and it looks bad, it is good. And I just need to zoom out of the whole, situation that I'm going through. And if it hurts, I need to give, a better perspective. I need to give a better meaning to it. Um, and that's actually my third book, Zoom In, Zoom Out. That's all about getting into the right perspective. And
that's so
that's really
beautiful.
helpful. Yeah, that's practical tools, like how to do that. Um, yeah, does that
Yeah,
answer your question?
that's so powerful because for sure, because when you say expanded consciousness, when we talk about trauma, we're usually in a constricted consciousness. We're in a tiny, tiny space. Like we shut
Yeah,
down and we can't think, we can't sleep, we can't function, right? The expanded consciousness, taking that step back and saying, in the bigger picture, do I know I'm okay? In the bigger picture, is life working out for me? And most people, majority of the people you speak to can say, yeah, so if I'm not feeling okay, maybe it's just this moment,
Yeah.
or maybe, it'll pass. And definitely, like, as we heal, we learn to believe in the moment, in the darkest times, this too shall pass.
Yeah. And it's not just in your mind, it reaches your heart and you feel it. And when you feel it, you can get through anything.
Right. That is a tremendous gift.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that I do all the time, even with my clients, as we're getting very, very stuck in the moment. What would happen if you just take a deep breath and you let go of today, you let go of this moment, what's really going on?
Yeah.
Give up the fear of the details, and give up the fear of everything going wrong, because right now it just feels like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Right.
beautiful.
The details are not always so important. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I'm excited that you're writing that book, Zoom In, Zoom Out. It sounds so perfect.
Yeah, it's
Because
out.
I was gonna,
I put it out in May.
oh, that's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so
I
I
didn't
would
do
I would
any
like to look.
marketing or anything for it. I put it out and I was in the middle of moving and things, so I didn't really talk about it much, but it is out. Zoom in, zoom out. And I actually did a workshop and I took people through this like guided meditation of how do you do that? How do you get to like that perspective that was really gifted to me? And it was amazing. It was so amazing. So I tried to make it into this format where people can do it on their own and read through different scenarios of zooming in and zooming out. So yeah, maybe you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I probably will, because I was gonna ask you. I just don't have like the time in front of me, and I know. Okay, it's 8:49. I know that you wanted to
My
discuss
early bedtime so that I can get up and do the important things.
and talk to God. Exactly.
Exactly.
Wow, I'm so inspired. Yeah, I was going to ask you, in general, for all of us on the journey looking for healing and hopefully having found certainty with God, having found that relationship, knowing that this world is a safe place, right? Rebuilding the belief in your body, rebuilding the nervous system, safety, I'm
Yeah.
going to be okay. What are the typical modalities that you use, or the modalities that you feel have helped you most, coming again, coming from the grind, coming from the darkness, coming from that degree of a wound?
Mhm.
It doesn't happen overnight. I
No.
know it's like a step-by-step journey.
Yeah.
Uh, and there is so much out there, thank God. And I think everybody will find their way.
Yeah.
And yes, it will look different for everyone. So it's not like we're here to say, like, everybody just do this and this and you're going to be
Yeah.
healed.
No.
Um, so step one, talk to God. Right?
Yeah. And honestly,
um,
all the steps, right? It's well, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, so where do we
Yeah.
go from there?
Yeah.
So we talk to God, we know the world's a good place. We start to
Yeah.
believe in ourselves. We start to believe I'm a good person. I'm not as wounded as I thought I am. I'm not here to live out all my days believing in my unworthiness, in my shame, in my I'm different and I'm crazy, right? So where do we go from here when we're looking to build ourselves back into functioning, healthy, vibrant human beings? You are so vibrant, Elisheva. It's like it's like you can tell it's not just a soul, you know it's not just your soul is connected to God. Your being is vibrant. You've brought yourself back to life. So I'm curious about the modalities that you've used, and anybody listening, if you have any questions, feel free to send it in. So yeah.
So really good question. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask because I'm very stubborn and I like to do things like my own way, even if it's the hardest way. So I actually didn't try any of these different kinds of trauma healing, or I really didn't. And I only used, well, I did do some like talk therapy. I went to some like trauma therapists and I tried to do like talk therapy because at one point in the book I talk about like I was physically sick. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk because I was so sick from literally just trauma trapped in my body. And so I tried to do all the different things, but for me, I'm just like really stubborn. And like I just felt like I wanted to do it with God. So I sat in my car, in my room, wherever I did it, and I literally did trauma like therapy sessions with God. And I would just talk to him about everything that hurt me, everything that I hated, everybody that hurt me. I would yell and I would scream and I would relive everything. And I went into the deepest and darkest places. And it took a long time because like there's this like onion, right? And you keep going down layers and layers and you don't remember necessarily a lot of things that come up, or the things that you don't think hurt you so much are things that really made a difference, right? So there's like all this stuff coming up, and I did it all in my conversations with God, and it was very intense, but he like helped me feel okay through the whole thing. I don't know that I would tell. I would encourage other people to use God as to help them heal. But like you said, there's so many different ways of doing it now. I don't know that I would say that's the best way. For me, it was, but it's maybe for you it'll be better to do it with somebody, and to have a coach, to have a healer. There's so many amazing resources. I started doing this years ago where, first of all, it wasn't very common. I went to so many, I probably went to over 10 doctors, if not more, before somebody told me like, hey, it's trauma, like it wasn't very common. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So now, like, there's so many different ways, and I'm like fascinated. And honestly, I don't know much about them, so I can't really talk for them. But that's the way that I did it. And I give a lot of credit to God because I didn't do this by myself. And I will say the upside of doing it this way is that, like, He was able to bring me to a place where when you heal, like you get to these different levels where you accept and you forgive and you're grateful for even the situations that happen. But he brought me to this place, like past that, of like love. I love, literally have love for people who have put me through the most traumatic situations in my life. I went all the way there, and it's real. I pray for them with love, and I really was able to let it go like so much because I did it with God. And at the end of the day, we're all just trying our best. Um, so that was a really good part of it. But I would recommend like looking, like you said, look into all the different ways, find what feels right for you, and use your relationship with God to heal.
Right, but you are saying very clearly that you just did it straight with God. There weren't all those fancy, you know, there healing has gotten so creative. And ultimately, what's the goal? The goal is for us to meet up with all our parts. Whether we're doing, IFS or we're doing psychedelics, right? There's a journey to meet ourselves, right? And you know, we all have this belief that I'll do it better if I do it that way, or no, it'll be better if I work with that practitioner, or I'll meet a deeper part of myself with the other modality, and really, it's kind of fascinating what you're saying. You're saying there are no excuses that you don't have money, and there are no excuses that you don't have time, and there are no excuses that nothing works for me, and there are no excuses that my trauma is too deep and I'm so locked up, and there's no excuse that like I'm too physically ill, because what you're saying, Elle, is that's it. Wake up.
Yeah.
No, no excuse is going to get you out of your space other than really meeting up with it by talking to God about it.
Yeah.
I think
And I
that's really fascinating.
yeah.
I think that's really fascinating.
I don't I would say working with somebody, doing one of these different ways of healing can be amazing for you, but it's about you. Um, I can't tell you how many therapists I went to, and I just like stayed at the first level. Like, it didn't work for me because I didn't want to. When I decided, I'm like, I didn't really have a choice. I was super sick. I needed to function. I needed to get better. So God like forced me into this place of like I needed to heal now. So I can't take so much credit for it, but I will tell you that it's 100% possible. What you just said. There's no excuses. It's not about money or meeting the right person or whatever it is. It's about you being ready, taking the jump. You don't have to be ready either. I didn't feel ready, but just doing it. Just do it. And what happens after is you heal. Like there's so many days that go by that I don't remember being sick. I don't remember having even trauma. I don't feel damaged. There's like a big part of you, even when you're healing, that you're like, am I ever going to feel like, not damaged? And I really got there. And it's, the end of my book happened, that first book, it happened maybe 5 years ago. That's not so long ago. And my life is like, it's a different world. It's like then and now. I'm like 5 years old.
You're 5 years old, and your life seems to be so full of joy. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your life now, about what has changed for you, and how much joy you currently are experiencing, if you want to
Sure.
share?
Yeah. I'm just gonna be honest. My life is not like rainbows and butterflies. I go through um, incredibly tough challenges, and it's just like my perspective is different. I so about my life right now. So I'm married now to a beautiful man who's like seriously, you know, another half of my soul, and that's been absolutely amazing. We were able to find like our dream home, and I just write books, and I'm able to like do everything on my own schedule, and do yoga and take care of myself. I eat healthy, I sleep amazing, I sleep like 8 hours a night. I used to not be able to sleep. I literally would go through for days not sleeping. I would not be able to eat. And now it's like I have an amazing relationship with food. I cook for myself, like I'm in a five-star restaurant. Like I just love everything that I do, and I romanticize every part of my life, because
Yeah.
going from where it's not good to where it's good. And to me, that's why it's such a blessing. Like people that had like a life like that, they don't have a life like this now. When you have it so hard and it gets better, it's like you just enjoy every second of it. So my life is magical now, but not because it's perfect. It's just I've been in another place, and I appreciate life, and I also continue to do the work. I don't take it for granted. I show up every day, and I still talk to God, and I pray, and I do my grounding, yoga, workout, whatever it is. I still take care of myself because I don't take it for granted. I don't think I have it in the bag. Um, it's something I'm going to continue to work on to be a healthy and happy person, and it works.
Yeah. But
Last.
I think that's an important piece. So first of all, like I'm just so happy when you say life is magical. I think that I want more people to hear that it's possible. Because I don't know how many people listening are like, not, no, not for me. No, she doesn't mean me. You know? And I know because I was there too, like, no, this ain't ever working out. And like honestly, I can also say like my life is magical right now. So I get that shift. But the important part is you're keeping it up. And you know what upkeep is? Upkeep is I will commit to me, to self-care. I will not betray my body. I will not betray my emotional needs. I will not betray my spiritual
Yeah.
connection. And
Hmm.
that's the only way you keep it up. Because upkeep means that, right? Like I'm now the creator of this life. I create the magic, with God,
Hmm.
rather than like I'm the victim of my circumstances, like the past, like I'm so out of control. The circumstances are bigger than me. I just feel so lost in this jungle, and then that great big leap into, wow, this is magical and I'm really part of it. And I'm showing up for it. So I think that's a huge message of
Yeah.
hope as well. Yeah. Wow. Um, Anybody else has any questions, or if you want to leave us with a final message, because I don't know the exact time right now, but I think
It's
we
perfect
probably
time.
need to.
9:01. Thank you so much
Okay.
for honoring that. My final message is, well, first of all, thank you so much. I really your feedback helps me get over the vulnerability hangover, which still comes back sometimes. It's out there, and it really gives meaning to the journey that I had. So I really appreciate that. And I guess I would reiterate what you said. I went through some pretty crazy things, and there was so much of my life that I thought that I would never, ever, ever be happy. Like it was impossible for me. And I just wanted at least to like not suffer. And I want you to know that not only is it so possible to heal but to be happy. Like you said, you really, every single person, you you were put here to have a good life, and it could just be a perspective change or some healing that needs to be done or a new action, a new practice that you can incorporate into your life. But it is so possible if you decide that you want to do it to make it happen. That's what I would leave you with. Just like you said, we're really on the same page, and I really appreciate you making this happen tonight.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to everybody who joined. Please go out, do yourself a favor, buy the book. This is not a commercial break. This book is called Dear God. It will change your life. It'll change your perspective about, there isn't a big deal. You have no excuses. Just go and create that relationship. God's right here. He's waiting for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the inspiration. This was so moving, and you've touched so many. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay.